Hi, this is Hart, and I am doing a Boho tag swap. I've sped up this video significantly because otherwise you'd be sitting here forever with me in this process. So right now what I'm doing is I'm cutting apart a cereal box to fit the 5 by 7 inch requirement, and I get 4 of those out of each cereal box. It's the perfect texture to make sure that it's durable enough for me to collage, paint, or whatever I ended up doing on this. There's 8 that I ended up cutting out of 2 cereal boxes, and so I use my tab punch to give me the top. The hole needs to be a 1/2 inch from the top of the box, and I ripped up some paper because I plan to immediately collage. As I sit here and decide which papers I'm going to collage, I'll talk you through what I've gathered with me. So I have 1, a credit card, which is what I smooth out the papers with, and 2, mixed media, gel medium as a glue. You'll notice that I also use a glue stick at some points. My gel medium, when you spread it on thick, it dries a little slower, then it dries pretty quickly. And so it works perfectly for collaging. Then I also don't worry about it falling apart either. So these papers that I've chosen actually came from a paper pad, magazines, some other papers, and you'll see that I fussy cut out some of the images that come on the paper pad. I chose the paper pad because it fell into the color scheme that I started to pull together. Because it's a Boho tag swap, I was choosing a color scheme that was bold and bright, and certainly not in my normal color palette. So I struggled a bit on this. I did go through my magazine images, grabbing the things that made me feel, oh, this might be Boho. I went to Joann's and bought this fabric you see here. I guess it's not fabric. This trim you see here of the flowers with the intention of trimming out each individual flower. I also got some lovely Happy Mail from Safia, and in that Happy Mail came some of these trims that you see that are just so fabulous. I even used a bit, you'll see that later, of sari. What I might do is super speed up the next part. That way, as you watch me go through this process, you won't be bored to tears. Okay, so at this point what I'm doing is applying the tissue paper with gel medium and trimming off the excess paper on the edges by ripping. Applying some trim that was sent by Safia, and then next to the trim I'm applying the end of a roll of washi tape where it pulled a little bit of the brown cardboard off of the washi tape, and I liked how that brown tag, stuck at the end. This is a fussy cutout flower, and I'm layering it into a cluster, and in this cluster I've decided to use one of those old-fashioned spirographs where you just use that little plastic thing and keep drawing like you're a little kid. I muddied up the spirograph with a purple bingo dauber that I got at the dollar store, and then layered the flower and created a little cluster that included, what did it include? I think it included, crap, I don't even remember what it included. Tissue paper, the spirograph, flower off the trim, some bling, and silver trim that Safia had sent. I'm now going around the edge with the purple bingo dauber. After I did it, I realized I didn't really like that so much, so I do go back and cover that up. So now I'm stitching on the peacock feather. Obviously, I don't have a lot of words today. And all I did was I wanted it to go around in a circle because I like the way it framed the flower, and I like the way the feather gives more of a Goodness, do I have 60,000 uhs in this video? Well, maybe. But I'm stitching on the sequins now to finish off this circle with the peacock feather. And then after I stitch on these sequins, by the way, when I stitched them on, at a hotel they have those button repair kits. And I used one of the button repair kits, just pulled out one of the needles from there. They sell things like that at the dollar store as well, Target, many other places for $1. And they usually come with a bunch of different colored threads. But that's all I stitched the sequins on with. Now I'm just doodling with a gold paint pen made by Deco Color and a silver paint pen made by, don't remember the name of that brand. Now I'm on to the second one where I don't even come close to finishing that here, but I decide I just want to lay it down and put it together. Down at the bottom right hand corner, I decide to add a fussy cut flower there. I come back to that later. On this one, I decided to be a little smarter about the layout, and instead of just gluing it down and committing, layering it up a bit to see how I liked it. Some of these colors may appear muted to you on the video, but they're actually not that muted. When you look up close, they are really bright colors, but next to each other at a great distance, they appear muted, which I find kind of interesting. So they're orange and green next to each other, but at a distance, it kind of beiges itself out. And now you can see where I fussy cut those flowers from. I use a combination of a glue stick for the magazine items, or with the collage pieces that I put down. Sometimes I'll use the glue stick, sometimes I'll use the gel medium. It just depends on what mood I'm in that day or what reason I want to pull it out for. I can't say that I always have a method to my madness, but if I'm working with very thin magazine images, I do prefer the glue stick. It doesn't wrinkle, and I have more control over the placement and movement of it. Now here I mess up putting the peacock feather, so I had to move it over a bit, and it looks like it has a reverse mohawk going on at the top there. That made me laugh. This image down at the bottom of the orange piece that looked like a funnel, that image down at the bottom actually says bar, and I don't know why, but on 2 of my boho tags I have the word bar. One of them actually comes from the word Barcelona, where I just trimmed off the bar in Barcelona. On this one I'm using some vintage ladies. I use one vintage lady here where she's just sitting next to it, and I chose it from Google Images that are free copyright for Gypsy. Not sure why the word Gypsy led me to boho, but I liked how she felt. On here I'm taking a piece of trim from one of my everyday journals. It's my Emerald Journey journal, and I just felt like that piece needed to be next to her outfit. Made me feel that way. I hand stitched that on with some wire, actually, because I used that same wire to attach that bottom peacock feather instead of gluing it down. I have a red flower that I had fussy cut out that you see over on the left hand side, and that one just seemed to be almost exactly the same color as the funnel. Then attached some sequins, and you can see I still have a lot more to go, so I won't show you the finished products till the end of this video, so at this point, if you're bored, go ahead and fast forward towards the end and you can see what they look like. So I have this man and woman that I got from an Airbnb magazine from Morocco. I thought the colors were perfect. I liked the blue and the orange that I had with them, and her orange skirt just absolutely led me to pull these couple of loud papers with her. And I like the variety of textures. It reminds me of an Indian stool I used to have, where they had beautiful sari fabrics that were stitched together, and they didn't actually match in print, but they matched in color, and so that's what I was going for on this particular one. And what I'm looking for here is which image will look really good underneath and on the right. And you can see me continue to fussy with that, and if I had this in real time, you'd actually laugh at how long it took me. And then finally I decide on the word Morocco because it came from the same page she came from, and it kind of tied it together at the bottom left and upper top right. So I trim off that black at the top of Morocco there because I didn't want the darkness on this. I wanted to keep it up and bright. So I find myself on many of these tags actually trimming off the white unless it's from ripped paper, because I love the look of ripped paper. So on this one I just go gung-ho and place them all down, and it's rare that I leave a page square when I apply it down, but in this case it actually worked nicely with the layout. So when I'm applying each one of these, I'm applying them with the glue stick, and I do run out of my glue stick here pretty soon. I did ponder leaving the lady and the guy together on the same page, or on the same tag, but when I went through and kept looking at all the different papers, I couldn't bring myself to keeping the guy and the lady together. So here's the guy, and there's where you see the word Barcelona, and I'm just pulling some colors that I think look good together to prepare for this guy. And so, and I actually feel bad, almost a little, I don't want to say sexist because it's not sexist, but I feel bad that I put the word bar with the guy. I suppose I also have the word bar with that vintage gypsy as well. And I certainly don't associate bar with boho. It just worked out that those were the words that ended up being chosen. It could have been the word sell or ona. I do use ona on one of the pages upside down. But it is what it is. I really didn't like the flowers. I didn't want him to turn all flowery. But, oh, that image just a second ago has a guy on it sitting in a chair, and I didn't use that for any of these tags, but I might make a tag for myself where I use the guy sitting in the chair. I'm still noodling on that one. I haven't finished the tag for myself yet. Maybe I'll do something like that in real time. That yellow piece that you see on the left-hand side, that yellow piece actually came from a bar ad, where it's a glass of yellow-looking beer. So I thought it was funny to put it on the same page. And now this trim or this ribbon that I got from Tuesday Morning with the various colors within the same ribbon, just fell in love with that ribbon. And so I might actually, I bought way too much of it. I'll never use that much. Doesn't it break your heart that I trimmed that peacock feather to make his little crown? Oof, that broke my heart a little bit. And because I glued him down so quickly and it had already started to dry, I couldn't peel back his head enough to get that perfect little spot. And so now I probably could have used a toothbrush, but I'm using the pointy tip of a pair of scissors to spread out the feathers while the glue is still wet before it dries all wonky. And then I really like the idea of giving him a crown. And so what I did is I cut off a piece of banister railing, and that railing was really pretty, and so thought it would turn into a great crown, and starting to line up with that oval that's behind him where he's standing. And then I think it's funny to give him a bow tie. So what you see me doing here is fussing with the bow, trying to come up with a way to give him a bow tie, and it was just too clowny and comical. And the more I messed with it, the more I realized this is just not going to work. I kept trying to get it smaller and smaller and said, no, it's clown. So it's going to go up on the A. So I'm not going to fussy with that and not use it on the thing. And so now I'm looking to see, what do I want to finish this right column? Still not happy with it, so I know I'm going to go back to that. Okay, while I'm looking at this, and I think this is kind of funny, so I'm going to share a little story since you've put up with watching me for this long. When I was a little girl, my grandmother told me a story about her and her brother was her best friend. And she and her brother went to church every Sunday, and there are a few songs that they would hear very regularly, and one of them was At the Cross. And for those of you who are religious and see this as a negative, I do apologize for that. But it's a fond memory I have with my grandmother where she told me she had gotten in trouble
And it's about the only story I can remember where she told me she had gotten in trouble. And what happened is she and her brother had made up alternative lyrics for At the Cross. Oh, by the way, this is Sorry down here, and I'm creating some clusters. So you see a little input on the video here of cluster making, because I knew I wanted some higher texture on the video. And so I'm just picking out the colors that go with his color scheme and making intentional clusters from the stuff that's just going around me and varying the sizes. And these are going to be just messy clusters where I'm going for the look of color more than I'm going for design or layout on the clusters. I have one piece of sari fabric, 2 pieces of trim. Those are all from Safia in India. The flowers came from the Joann's haul that I had a while back. A couple of them have peacock feathers, and I can't think of what else is in there, but there's some paper and stuff like that. And then I trim off some of that background sari so it's not so square. Okay, back to the At the Bar story. So she and her brother are going to, like I said, church on a regular basis. They go home and they draft alternative lyrics to At the Bar. So I'm going to sing them for you. And if you are religious, please fast forward past this part. So it goes, at the bar where I smoked my first cigar, and the money in my pockets rolled away. It was there by chance that I lost my Sunday pants, and I go to church naked every day. And when she sang it to me, I died laughing, and it stuck. And so every once in a while, I would bring it back up to her and to remember how to sing it, and we would laugh about it. And it always brought her fond memories of her brother who had passed. And oh my goodness, I just think it's adorable. So now, to this day, if I ever hear the song At the Cross, I'm ruined because I immediately go to that song. But now you can see how I applied the cluster, and I attached some additional ribbon and trim that I pulled from my box of crazy fibers and trims that I've altered over the years. So I've had that box of fibers and trim for probably 15 years, and I've emptied some pieces of it and refilled it with different pieces over the years, and I just love that box. It's a happy box for me. So in this one, I'm ready to start a new tag, and I'm not done with any of the particular tags. And so after fussy cutting flowers, I decided to put a couple of stamps down that I had bought from Tuesday Morning. That local store has the nicest ladies in it. And in any case, this particular stamp reminds me of Mardi Gras. It's a Delusions stamp made by Ranger. But even though it reminded me of Mardi Gras, I still wanted to have it here on the boho tag. Now, I didn't do a good job of stamping, even though I gave myself a little mat on the back. That's just who I am. I'm a crappy stamper. But I doodled in to finish the wild hair that she has, and thankfully it was wild enough that the pen doodles all around filled it in nicely. Now, I stamped this little birdie. Oh, nope, that's the love heart. I stamped that one twice, ended up not using that at all. I did use, on the other hand, these, whatever you call them, when you blow them and you make a little wish and the seeds fly everywhere. I forget what those are called, but you can see them there. I did end up using that on another one. And that gold ink pad made by Studio G is years old. I rarely use it, but yet it's still juicy. And one of the tricks I have for stamp pads, and a lot of us use this trick, but if you're new to crafting, you put them in a Ziploc bag after you close them up. Oh, here's where you see Ona that I think I end up putting upside down. And I'm back to using gel medium. So if you don't have gel medium at the ready, then make sure that you have glue sticks at the ready if you're going to be doing collaging, and you'll be just as happy with your glue sticks as the gel medium. In fact, in some cases, probably even happier, unless you're attaching something like a cluster. So if you don't have the gel medium on hand and you're attaching a cluster, go ahead and staple it. and you just back that staple with a washi tape. And I don't necessarily want you to go out and go shopping and use materials you don't have. Part of the love of collaging is you use what you have all around you to make these things work. So a lot of this, I went into my stash and grabbed the colors, and in fact that Barcelona word is almost my perfect color scheme of what I was grabbing. The only thing it's missing is the royal blue that I grabbed from the Man and the Lady, which I found that I really liked as well. And the green that I had on many of my pages, like that one that looks more muted from a distance. It's a bright green and a bright orange up close and zoomed in. In fact, it's the same colors that you see there in the flowers below, but because it's zoomed out, it gives it a more muted look. I don't know how you can handle seeing me do all of this crafting. Let me know how this works, because I can't keep a video like this down to some small video amount of time. Certainly if it was real time, you'd be dying by now, because we would barely be on still that first tag. I do love how this lady looks in this stamp. This stamp is also from that same Tuesday morning haul. I have another video for that. It's in my haul playlist. But I gave her a table upside down as her body, and that table had a velvet tablecloth, and I just knew that I wasn't going to need to shape the tablecloth because I was going to be covering it too much. And behind her and in front of her, I'm collaging a bar scene, because not so much that I like the bar scene, but more that I like the colors together on the page and around that tablecloth. And so I do like adding this tissue to almost every one of the tags, because it mutes the hard lines and the hard edges. And I've decided to give her a cluster as well, I think. I'm looking for little pieces to add to give it dimension on this page. And so here I'm just trimming off the hard edges, because I think it has enough hard edges, and just put the cluster right next to her. I'm looking for a way to use my extra fibers from the peacock, or pieces of the feather from the peacock, and just lay that cluster down with some gel medium, which acts as a lovely glue for that. You can also use Eileen's tacky glue for laying those down if you don't want to use a stapler, or Elmer's glue, good old-fashioned school glue, which is PVA, if you hear people talk about PVA glue. You can see that hidden bird behind her. He actually starts to blend in. You can barely tell it's a bird anymore, but I'm okay with that. And that little silver jar is of a bunch of little things for when I need to fill little areas. Now these little flowers that I keep pulling in and out, they did come from the same paper pack, and that's why some of these papers look cohesive, is because I grabbed a lot of them from the same paper pack and I just had fussy cut them out. And on here, instead of using the, well, this one I did use the whole flower, but that blingy that's on the inside, I also used the blingy to fill the inside of the, oh, I keep forgetting what you call that trim. And then I took the inside of a third flower out because I wanted the blingy in the middle of the curl on her forehead. Doesn't that remind you of the song? There was this little girl who had a little curl in the middle of her forehead. When she was good, she was really, really good. When she was bad, she was horrid. I was singing that over and over again when I was doing that particular page. And so this, what I'm creating, this is eventually going to be my tag, which I have hardly even started yet. All I'm doing is making it a mess and just putting the white paper down. That way, when I do my lines later, which you'll see, what I'll end up doing is making that messy page into boho doodles or collage or whatever I end up doing with it. So I'm obviously filling this page up with some random itty bitty scraps. And I think I'm just trying to change it up in how I'm doing it instead of laying the big scraps down. That way they don't all look exactly the same. This is also a good technique to use your itty bitty scraps when you start to develop a lot of them. And it keeps you from hoarding too many things if you keep using them as you go instead of waiting for a moment to use your itty bitty scraps. I think that's one of the nice things about doing swaps when you're doing it with more than one person is you force yourself to pull yourself outside of designing things in the same way, unless your intent is to make each of them exactly the same. Now, that's also why I'm not a great quilter, because I'm not great at making things exactly the same. I just keep going random to random. And it's funny, now that I'm zoomed out from looking so close at this for so many days, there are many different layouts that I think I would have changed, but I'm happy with the way it is. And what I'm trimming out here is this veranda, I guess you call it, little patio. And I also like the texture of this little veranda, this little outdoor patio that you stand on. And here, I fussy with it a bit, trying to find the mixture of textures that I'm looking for on this. And so my colors start to vary quite a bit. And this one I also didn't fully edit out when I changed my mind, and I changed my mind, and I keep changing my mind. And the reason I'm leaving this in is because if you are a new collager, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to go back and forth and lay them out. A lot of people that you're watching on YouTube, they probably edit out where they decided this, and they decided on the layout, and then boom, they craft the video. Whereas I do that a lot as well, where it looks like, boom, I know exactly what I'm doing. But no, I spent a long time deciding how I want them laid out. And boy, do I love that veranda. Or not veranda, that little outdoor patio, tiny patio. And so, even though this one is messy and very different than the layouts of the other ones, this particular one turned out to be my favorite. Hard to describe exactly why it's my favorite, but Rose, who is the person that designed the logo for the nonprofit foundation, and then also volunteered to edit the logo and gave it a paintbrush in the middle. If you haven't seen it, it's very, very cool. She did a great job with that. And in any case, I decided to give this one, she's also in the swap, so I decided to give this one to Rose. Not this one, that last one. And you'll see me come back to it later and finish. Here it is. This one is the one I decided to give to Rose. And so I really, at the time, while I'm working on it right here, I hated it and kept going back to the other one. So I decided to finish this lady instead. And you'll see that I work on more than one at a time. I just keep flipping back and forth because I can't decide exactly how I want it. So I'm fussing with the clusters, and I was thinking about making a cluster of clusters. Thought that would be kind of funny. So I messed with this. It doesn't end up that way, by the way, because I just thought it was too busy and too messy. Whew. You can tell that I'm sitting on the outdoor patio right now because the motorcycles just decided to go by, so my brain's a little bit fuzzy. But I'm still tinkering with this one. You'd think I would figure out how to stop tinkering with this one by now. So I go off and I decide what it's missing is a vintage focal point, and bam, I got it. And so what I did is grabbed the vintage ladies, went through for a long time to pick out which vintage lady, and decided on this one who felt like an angel to me. And I bring that angel feeling back into it later. And so when I put the trim down, I just used a different kind of wet glue to put this trim down. I don't recall the name of this wet glue, but the cluster that I put down, I actually scrunched the sari on that one. And I come back to this lady and decide which way do I want to pop this peacock on. And so these peacock feathers, I don't know if peacock is really boho, but it felt boho to me. And I'm, like I said, absolutely brand new to boho. This is my very first boho project. Or I should say my very first 7 boho projects. And this page came out more steampunk than boho. In fact, when I was done with it, I thought, man, if I grayed out and muted some of those colors, added some purples, and put on some gears, this lady's fabulous banister, which I ended up putting that banister upside down. Do you see that? Where that patio is upside down on her head like a hat? How goofy is that? And then I put a cluster on the left to get rid of the edge of the banister, so you don't see that the hat stops being round right there. It also covers up a portion of what I didn't like about where the 2 collaged scraps of paper blurred in. And then I'm happy with where the peacock feather goes to cover the top point of her hat, because it goes a little bit high. And I come back to tinker with that a little bit. Again, you'll see her later, but I absolutely love this. And I'm starting to get the feeling that I want to trim the bottoms with the washi tape. And I decide not to glue it down just yet on the lady with the banister hat, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep it, so that's why I didn't glue her down yet. But if you're going to use washi on something you want to keep for a long time, then you want to make sure that you apply either a glue stick or matte medium or a wet glue or something like that to the washi tape, because sometimes that washi sticky doesn't stay. And so now you can see that I decided I really like the way the washi looks down at the bottom, so I'm messing with all of them and picking different washis or the same washi to go on the bottom. And I really wanted to use that bling in a long strip somewhere, but it was just so overwhelming. So back to her, and I decided to go with a yellow washi on her because it was too much orange. And there's a lot of yellow in the flowers when you look up close on that bottom part of the scrap paper. And the yellow in this one as well pulls the yellow from the top. But I wasn't fully decided on that one, so I hadn't glued it down. And that's one of the nice things about washi. Some washis, if you put it down and you go to rip it up hours later, it will rip your paper. So test your washis before you do that. But on that particular set of washis, I knew I had time. So I'm ready to go back and doodle some. I was just in the mood to doodle. And so I grabbed my gold Deco Art paint pen and just start putting doodles every which way. I can spend hours doodling. And so I apply first the gold, and then I take a fine point red pen and I draw lines down underneath each of those little arches, and they're just skinny little straight lines that come down. And then again at the crevices in between the arches above them, I make it the same on both sides, trying to go from bigger to smaller. So on this one, I also put little bubbles at the top of each of the arches, and then I added little dots with a red thicker tip pen. I'm adding orange now. It's also a paint pen, and this orange just allows me to create some brightness. I use my white pen to bring light back onto the images and add some dots here and there with the white pen. Now, and this is the gold pen again, when you're doing your collages, or any kind of art for that matter, when you start doing it, you're going to feel like, oh wow, this isn't what I really want it to be. But I find that the best art, the art that draws my attention, I'm doodling with a white pen to make her dress pop, by the way, and then adding some details to give her dress some character. But anyway, it's the details that grab my eye and make me continue to look at a piece of art. Sometimes it's the brush strokes, or sometimes it's the itty-bitty tiny little details that most people wouldn't notice that the artist put in there, and I try to find them. When I was a little girl, I end up not using this here. That's why I'm going to tell you a story. So when I was a little girl, I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida, and they have a museum there. That's the Dolly Museum. It's now been moved to a bigger building, and it's more wow and cool and pop. And it was wow and cool and pop way back in the day, just smaller and different. And it was created because one of the largest Dolly collectors had left it to the museum. And now you can see me messing with the white, by the way. That's my tag in the future with the, what are those, dandelions? Is that what they're called? When you blow them and you make a wish and the seeds go everywhere. But yeah, back to Dolly. So with that museum, I used to stand in front of them as a little kid and look at every one of the pieces for the longest time to try to understand his layers and understand why he put some colors with some other colors and the details of his super confusing pieces of very surreal art. And if you don't know who Salvador Dali is, if you're not big into art, and or if you're just not familiar with surreal art, he's fabulous. He knocks my socks off. So I'm just talking through my doodles. Earlier, I put on the white paint pen. I want to talk about this for a second. I put on the white paint pen, and if you use a paint pen, right after you put it down, if you put it down kind of thick, then you can actually smudge it with your finger and it blurs it nicely. So on one of your practice pages somewhere, or any of your art, just tinker with that a little bit and see how long you can get it to smudge. And you'll see me doing that here again with his collar. I just thought his outfit was too bland, so I added a bit to his outfit. I wanted to make it more like a suit, I guess, instead of just a shirt and a pair of pants. So I take my gold paint pen and I do edges on each of these cards. I think I did it on all 7 of the cards. I'm not really sure. So with her now, I colored her lips red. It doesn't feel like enough, so I ended up going back and tinkering with her again. I used my white paint pen to white out her eyes and the red to frame in her eyebrows. Makes her look like she's looking up to me. Now, I'm fussing with the tiniest little glimmer dot, and this is back to the details. So whoever gets this card is about the only one who's going to be able to see these, because you can only see them in person. But I use my glitter glue to glue down her eyes, and that's after putting the whites in her eyes. And when I do that, I realize, oh, I need a little bit more glitter glue for her eyeshadow. And so I use my 0 number paintbrush, and it's just a cheapy paintbrush, but it's a number 0 to paint in where I wanted the glitter glue to go. That way I had more control, because that squeeze bottle gives you a huge area. And then I decide that I'm liking the idea of that butterfly behind her to have a lot of glitter. So I use the glitter glue as my adhesive and then dust it on, glitter on that, and then off screen I do an enormous amount of tapping. That way whoever gets this card doesn't have a glitter mess on their hands. And then as you can see there, I just use the gold to trim the outside. Now I don't trim 100% of my tag in the gold, I just trim it where I want it to pop out. So if it's going next to, and you'll see that here, if that gold is going next to ribbon, then I won't put the gold on the ribbon unless it's a small part. Here I'm fussing with tiny little gems. I love bling, and so on top of the sequins that I made a belt for her, I used the glitter glue, and then I used the tiny string of self-adhesive bling, even though I don't trust the self-adhesive. So that's why I use the glitter glue underneath. And then for her skirt, I also brushed, using my little brush, the glitter down the pleats of the skirt, and then spread it around lighter in some of the other areas. trim off the edges, and I'm happy where they're there. Now I decided she just looked way too steampunk, so I wanted to give her a bold and colorful, almost clown-like face. It's very hard to describe what was in my head at that time. I look at it now and think, wow, what was I thinking? But her nose was not defined at all. So I used my finger and a red paint pen to smudge, and then the orange paint pen as well, just to smudge. I didn't want her whole face filled, and then I wanted to cover her lips in the rust glitter that I was using. It's a distress glitter, and it looks like rust. Then I used the glitter glue to draw in the elements in the hair that I wanted to have glitter. And that hair does look like Medusa to me, but that glitter did make it pop. Now, you can't really see the various glitter elements that happen on each of these tags. Some are subtle and some are bright. So my rust glitter is very thick and dimensional, and the glitter glue is lighter, and you can determine how much of that glue to put down to allow you to have a lot more bling or just a little bit. And then in the paper pad, many of these papers have a very subtle glittery or bling to them. Almost all of the papers that I chose for this mix. And so with each person who gets these tags, each one of the people are going to notice in person that it's a little bit blingy. And for the two people who got the rust-colored glitter, I hope it stays nice and safe and doesn't come off like a cheap pair of glitter shoes. Boy, that's a weird statement, but you know, you've seen those. You go shopping and you're in the store and you pick up the shoes off the shelf, and then you put the shoes back on the shelf and you've got glitter all over your fingers. And that's one of the reasons why I rarely use glitter, but for me, Boho needed bright, it needed bling, it needed some type of a fibrous texture, which is why I pulled out the fibers and the peacock and certain types of trim that I had. And oh, by the way, I'm back to this one again, and I'm applying the glitter glue to the peacock feather, to the lady's dress, and then I'm applying my thicker glitter using my gel medium. I pop it down using my fine, or my 0 number paintbrush, and then I dust the glitter onto it. And it's still too clustered for me. I seriously tap it, and then it's not enough, so I use my letter opener to carve the glitter back into the shape of the dandelions. Is that what they're called? Oh, please correct me if you've watched this video this far to let me know if they're called dandelions. But in any case, that was the stamp. And I like how they turned out, and they shine quite a bit. Now I have a flower I've drawn for years. I don't even know where I've learned to do that. It's just a simple flower petal, but it happened to be similar to the flowers that I fussy cut out, and so I'm just drawing this into this circle, and if I mess up, it's not a big deal. It's a watercolor pencil, and so I just smudge it if I mess up and I don't like it. And I put it a little bit darker down at the bottom right to give it a sense of location, and all I did here was smudge it to make that circle more orange. And these were circles that I had punched out for a different project. You've got to be bored watching me go with that gold pen by now, but just practice freehanding with a pen on the outside of your projects instead of always inking the edges. Sometimes it's nice to put something different on the edges. If you want to do the bingo dauber, I'm not sure how acid-free that is, so be careful what that bingo dauber is going next to, because I assumed that that's not a archival safe ink. And this is the one that I originally inked purple with the bingo dauber and decided, yep, I like that washi tape there, so let's go ahead and stick it down. Because remember, before I had decided I'm not really sure if I want to do that. So now I'm about done with all these cards, besides some minor fussying, The next part of this video, I'm going to show you what I did to the back of each of the cards. And so on each of the cards, I had a requirement of having a pocket where you put your information. So I decided to put 2 pockets that you see down below. And I trimmed all of them already in gold. And I cut that part of the video because that's kind of boring. If you want to learn how to make a pocket like these ones, then just let me know. But these pockets, I made them to be business card size so I could add the Disabled Artist Foundation video. And I am just going to go through here and I zoomed you in just so you could see. And I'm just going to go through here and doodle. These are images that are in my head that I'm sure I've seen other people draw these things. I'm sure that they almost seem Native American in some of the images. The eye, definitely. I use the eye in a lot of these. They feel like something that should be in boho for me personally. I feel like crosses and pluses and dots feel like boho. For some reason I think feathers when I think boho. I think that's what pulled me to gypsy, is a lot of the things that feel boho reminded me of gypsy, or maybe it's gypsy that reminded me of boho, I'm not really sure. This pink paint pen on the red paper is very hard to see and it's faint, so I apologize for that on the video here. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret since you've suffered with me this long in watching my video. The little secret is a simple one. Years and years ago, I created this language, and you see me flipping through this book, and you can see a couple of the words that I had come up with. And I also came up with a full alphabet for them. And I was inspired by some cave paintings where nobody ever talks about the markings on the wall. And it just sent me into this frenzy where I felt like I had to create, oh yeah, feathers feel boho to me too. It sent me on this frenzy where I had to create the language. And so at this point, I was deciding who each of these cards or these tags were going to go to. And so secretly, without sharing my whole language, which now it fully is a complete language, without sharing that information, I have put the person's name inside of my doodles. And so there is a character for certain sounds, which is not the same as our 26-letter alphabet in English. It's not the same as any other language I've ever seen. And so these characters do fall into, and I'm doodling over the top of some of the characters. So it's more than just the characters on the page, as you can see. And it's hard for me to describe that emotion that I felt when I was creating that language, and I even studied linguistics for a little bit to try to get a feel for it. I come back and doodle on this page. Oh, I bought this stamp. I was so excited because it had a shield and it said CH, and then it didn't stamp right. So I just drew in what the stamp was going to be on just this one, and I didn't do this with any of the other ones. I might put the rest of this to music and just be done with the talking part of this video. That way you guys don't feel like you have to listen to so many words. Oh, I'm using a dried up baby wipe to ink the edges because I didn't have anything handy. Such a goof. And I only inked the edges of this one. But anyway, let's just put the rest of this to music. You can speed it up or you can just enjoy the simple happy music that I put it to, and I'm gonna head for bed. holy smacks, you stuck it out with me for this long. So here's the first 2 tags, and I figured I would show you what they look like. Tags 3 and 4. Doesn't the one on the left look like steampunk? 5 and 6. And it's not an even number, so here's tag 7. And then I gave you a close-up of the back of one of the tags, and I don't have these tags matched up to the other ones. Here's 2 more backs, and they all have their cute little pockets down at the bottom. And another 2. I like how the eye came out on it, a bunch of these. Like, I enjoyed doing these eyes. And then the packaging, I put them each in on the left, and thanks for watching. Everyone take care.